Okay, so here we are on number 12. And I am going to start with this one, and I will turn this one into sines and cosines. Just again, maybe why? Well, I have cosines in some of them. Maybe it's easier to get this in terms of sines and cosines. I don't know. Sometimes it's just a guess and check kind of thing. I know that's not a really great answer, but again, the more you do it, the more you kind of see some patterns. So I'm going to start with cotangent, and I'm going to make it cosine squared x over sine squared x. And I'm going to leave this as minus cosine squared x. Okay, we want to combine. And in order to combine, we need a common denominator. So what that means is I need to multiply this guy by sine squared over sine squared. Okay, so I'm going to say our common denominator now is sine squared. That guy's going to be our cosine squared minus, now we just have to be careful, this numerator here is cosine times sine squared. Sorry, cosine squared times sine squared. Okay. I'm going to look at my final answer and I'm going to say, okay, what do I need? Well, I need a cosine times a cotangent. I see each of these terms have a cosine in it, which makes me think, let's factor out a cosine. So I would be left with 1 minus sine squared, right? So cosine times 1 gets me cosine squared times sine squared gets me that. Okay, so all I did was I pulled out a factor of cosine squared. And now I'm looking at this guy and I'm saying, hey, you look like my Pythagorean identity. So again, sine squared plus cosine squared equals 1. And I want 1 minus sine squared. So if I solve, I now have cosine squared is equal to 1 minus sine squared. Okay, so I'm going to go up here, and I'm going to substitute that in, and I'll pull this work over here. So I have cosine squared x times, I'm going to replace that, cosine squared x all over sine squared. So keep in mind what we want. We want cosine times cotangent. Keep in mind how fractions work. Tops with tops, bottoms with bottoms. So all I'm going to do is write this separately. Cosine squared x, that could be like over 1, times cosine squared x over sine squared x. Okay, and what does that simplify down to? Well, there's your cosine squared x times cotangent squared x. And that is number 12.